Hello, my friends, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, I wanted to talk about, well, boss fights. I'm sure you've seen the article from Kotaku circling the internet about this games journalist, of course, who is saying, could we be about to enter a skippable boss fight utopia? He's apparently never liked boss fights, and when he loaded up South of Midnight, was very excited to see that there is actually an option in there to, well, skip boss fights to not have to do them. He's genuinely hoping that more games will follow that kind of idea and satisfy him and, according to him, the millions of other players who would like to skip boss fights. Now, I understand that you can definitely have an opinion and that you may not like boss fights or whatever, but to actually go so far as to think that there are literally millions of other people in the gaming market that want to skip boss fights, I think that kind of steers off into the narcissistic category. We do have a tendency to see more of ourselves in others than likely exists, basically project our own personal mindsets on others. And I imagine that's part of where that's coming from. Just look at the success of Expedition 33. I'm not sure there are many people who have played that game and thought, gee, this game needs less boss fights. Personally, the fact that there are bosses that are optional, you still have the main bosses, of course, but there are optional bosses. I think it strikes a really excellent balance between regular combat, boss combat, and story, all three together in a game that people enjoy playing. And obviously they enjoy it quite a bit more than they enjoyed South of Midnight. He goes on to state, who is it really hurting for me to have a skip boss fights marker, so on and so forth. And he's not wrong. In theory, putting that option in the game doesn't necessarily hurt anybody. But let's take a look at the type of developer who chose to actually put it in the game. It's not a developer who was looking to make a game that engaged people in a fun and amazing way. It was a developer who put it in to coddle other people. And if you are a game developer looking to just put things in an attempt to get people to buy your game as opposed to putting things in because they might be fun, I think that might have an ultimate effect on your product at the end. And honestly, from the reviews I've seen of South of Midnight, the art style's okay, the story's weird, and the combat gets repetitive. At that point, if you were going to put repetitive combat in a game like that, of course people are going to want to be able to skip boss fights. Who's going to want to play a repetitive game? Making a game in which you can skip the fights makes it less repetitive, right? In the end, when you put those kinds of things into a game, skipping boss fights, when you talk about putting in easy modes or story modes or canon modes or whatever, it goes into the thought process of the developer, and it does genuinely change how they then develop that game. If you're developing the game with people in mind who probably aren't all that into fighting bosses, well, why not just develop a puzzle game at that point in time? So you don't have to fight bosses. If you're not into fighting bosses, play games that don't have bosses. It's really not that difficult. And he goes on to whine about the fact he's not able to beat Metroid Prime because bosses get too hard at some point, that there are games he'll never see the end of because the bosses just get too hard at some point. And he whines about people saying get good or whatever. Well, fact of the matter is if you are not engaging the game in the way the developer created the game, if you don't enjoy the way the developer created the game, that's kind of a you thing. That's not everybody else's problem. The entire gaming world does not need to be developed in a way that will match up to you. Would I be angry if more games came out with a skip boss option? Probably not, because realistically, the games that would come out with a skip boss option, I would not play, because they're going to end up along the same lines as South of Midnight, or with like a canon mode, they're going to end up like Assassin's Creed Shadows, where people really aren't all that thrilled with any of it. You end up with a mediocre game because instead of trying for greatness, they're kind of trying for a middle ground that's going to please both the people who enjoy hard stuff and the people who enjoy, well, the wimps, we'll put it that way. And you end up creating something that nobody really likes. And that is something games journalists like this, people, you know what? It's not just a games journalist issues, because there are people like this in everyday life. People who think, well, I think this is too hard. It needs to be made easier for me. And then everybody be happy because, it's just easier for me and everybody else can work hard, but it's easy for me. And no, that's not how things work. Part of some of these games, what is actually considered when they are designing some of these games, is the difficulty, is the satisfaction you feel when you actually overcome something difficult. And for many people, if you take that away, and you do take it away when the developer stops thinking about how they're going to make this game more involved and instead think about how they can scale it to all these various people as opposed to focus on one key area. There are so many different types of gamers, and because there are so many different types of gamers, there should be so many different types of games. This seems like someone who would be more at home in a Until Dawn as opposed to Elden Ring. They would much rather play something that they get to watch the story and maybe click a few buttons here and there, not where they actually have to make consistent effort to get better as things get harder. At some point, they reach their max level of I can only deal with this much and I don't want to deal with anymore. And it's fine for those people to exist. I have no problems with those people existing, and I have no problems with games for those people existing. What I and many other gamers have a problem with is when you look at a game like, let's take Expedition 33, for example. I didn't even really like the idea that you can make the combos automatic. I mean, you can't do auto dodging or anything, but you can turn it on so that when instead of hitting the button for the combos, you automatically get those. That's kind of a whatever thing, but it doesn't affect me. I don't have to turn it on. And in this case, it's actually such a minor thing that I don't know that it affected the rest of the game. Actually, very obviously, it didn't affect the rest of the game. The rest of the game is still absolutely fucking amazing. Now, a AAA studio is not capable of doing two things at once. They can only do one, and they typically fuck that up. But I've already said it, there are games for people who don't like scaling difficulties. I have to wonder if he was in a scaling difficulty puzzle game. Would he give up because the puzzles got too hard? Should there be an auto solve in a puzzle game? And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually said yes, I'll be entirely honest. At which point, why do you play the games? And that is why people get upset at people like him, because we're like, why do you even play the game then? It makes zero sense to us. Why even engage with something in which you have to pick up a controller and move yourself around if you aren't going to engage the challenge? If you give up partway through, you know what? That's okay. There are games I haven't beat. I love Bloodborne. Bloodborne is an amazing game. I love seeing everything about it. I wish I could see more of it, but because of the way my little brain works and the fact that I would like to actually play it someday and actually get through it on my own and experience it, as opposed to just watching it through somebody else, I haven't watched anything. I've watched lore videos and stuff, but I haven't watched playing the game videos. I haven't watched Let's Plays or anything like that. And I can't even get to the Cleric Beast, let alone beat the Cleric Beast. Someday I will get there. Right now I have other games I'm playing, so it's kind of low on the priority list. But I am an example of somebody who can engage with a mechanic that is too tough for me, say, oh, that's okay, and move on to something else without feeling like I'm being left out. It is, you know what, and I just had this realization in this very moment, it is a fear of missing out issue, because these people are so afraid that they're missing out on the experience. They want something extra in to help them deal with the fact that they're missing out on the experience. They just can't accept the fact that some experiences we don't get to have. Some experiences are just not for us, and that's okay. It's okay to not actually be able to beat a game. There are so many other games out there. To sit there whining about one specific type of game is a waste of your time. To expect other games to put in something so that you can play games that you can't normally beat is a waste of everybody's time. It is a waste of the developers' times, it's a waste of the gamers' time, and it leads to games that are in the end more mediocre. As I've already repeated again, it leads to a mindset in the game that they don't have to work as hard, because how many people are going to be using this setting now? Most people don't even want to be tempted by it because, let's face it, a lot of us are very lazy, and there is a certain population who would happily turn it on even though they don't actually want to. They're kind of weird, but so is the idea of, oh God, I can't beat this game. They need to change it so I can. That is also very weird, at least to me. So the overall issue here is less that we don't want you to be able to play the game, and more that we don't want your inability to play the game to impact games that we like to play. We should all be okay with identifying games that we might like to play but can't for whatever reason, and not being able to play those games because we don't have to be able to play everything, and instead finding games that are more our type. It's like me asking a first-person shooter to force in a third-person view, even though the game classically never had it. At that point, what am I taking the devs away from to create that new thing for me? When you ask a game to be everything for everybody, it is nothing for anyone. I mean, everybody at that point has a reason to be disappointed with it because they don't get to focus. I firmly believe one of the reasons Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is doing as well as it is because they focused so hard on what they wanted to be. There's so much inspiration from various games that you can see in Expedition 33 without it being an outright copy. I know I keep talking about it, but it's such a great game. If you haven't played it, again, you really should. I will be hopefully playing it more this evening after I finish editing this video, and I will definitely be playing it more here on this channel tomorrow night when I do my weekly stream at about 7 p.m. Mountain Time. But hopefully I get a little bit of time to play it on my streaming channel here after I finish this. It'll depend on how late it is when I'm done. I've put a poll up on Twitter. If you want to go answer the poll, maybe I'll have a conversation about the results in the comments next time I make a video. God only knows when that'll be, but probably tomorrow night, depending on how things go. Right now, I'm kind of just flying with where inspiration strikes. And this really just, I really do feel like to some degree, I have to agree with the point that just having the toggle in there on its own in a vacuum doesn't affect anything else. It's when you step back and look at what happens when you put that kind of toggle in a game, what the developers are thinking when they're putting that kind of toggle in a game, that has a tendency to cause the problem. The people who are upset about putting that kind of toggle in the game aren't upset because they care about if other people beat the boss or not. They just don't want people fucking around with the actual fabric behind the games. They want a game that's going to still have that same kind of passion for the difficulty. I'm sure there's probably developers out there that could put the toggle in without actually harming the quality of the overall work, but I don't think there's that many of them. It actually takes talent to be able to ignore that you've done that kind of thing and move on. It's just like in today's world, when it comes to difficulty level, all it means is whether or not your enemies are suddenly bullet sponges or not. And that's just frustrating. In today's world, you would think with the sliding difficulty, you could ramp up the AI or something. They used to actually do a little bit of that back in games before, we had all this amazing technological stuff, but they seem to have forgotten how to do that. So when you say, well, make difficulty sliders, no, we don't want difficulty sliders or settings or whatever you want to call them. We just want a game that's good. We want the game to just be good. Anyway, that's probably all I had to say. If you want to go and participate in that poll, the link to my X account is down in the description. Vote, leave a comment, whatever. Or don't, or, whatever. If you use X, I know a lot of people don't. That's fine. I will see you tonight at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you really enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell. If you really liked it, feel free to share it with others. I'd love to hear what they think too, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. A special thanks to the channel members for their amazing support. You are the best. Interested in joining them? Check out the description for more info, and I will catch you later.